Brandon Duhaime is eager to learn from Pat Maroon as the season unfolds. How else does Duhaime get ready for a typical NHL season? Plus, what did he do in the offseason? We discuss all that and more on today's Get to Know Him episode of Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Brandon Duhaime, and this is Locked on Wild.
That's right. Welcome into another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any of our new episodes throughout the course of the week. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit fanduel.com/locked on to get started. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, Brandon Duhaime joins the show to discuss the offseason, how he gets ready for a typical NHL season, having Pat Maroon as a line mate, and more as we dive into life as an NHLer as well. We'll also get to know Duhaime a little bit, his road to the NHL, and some of the interesting notes from the 2016 NHL draft class in which Duhaime was a part. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, and we will hear from the man himself a little bit later here today. But we are going to try to do more of these get to know him episodes, just diving into a little bit of the players that make up the 2023-2024 Minnesota Wild team. And we will try to have a structure with this, which will include hearing from the players themselves. So Brandon Duhaime will be the inaugural Get to Know Him edition. You may remember those old Minnesota Twins commercials in the early 2000s, in which they did the Get to Know Him series. Well, we're bringing that back here on Locked on Wild. So Duhaime hails from Florida, obviously, was born in Coral Springs, Florida on May 22nd of 1997. Duhaime made his way through the ranks of the under 18 teams through the pursuit of excellence. Also had a little bit of a cup of tea with the Chicago Steel and the Tri-City Storm before heading to Providence College, where he played 3 years after being drafted by the Minnesota Wild, which included a career high 11 goals, 23 assists, and 34 points in his 2018-2019 season. Then came the Iowa Wild for 2 seasons. 6 goals, 14 assists, 20 total points in 2019-2020. Then in 2020-2021, played in 24 games for the Iowa Wild before making it to the NHL roster. And Duhaime did not disappoint there either. Played in 80 games for the Minnesota Wild in 2021-2022. 6 goals, 11 assists, 17 total points, 122 penalty minutes. Last year, 51 games, had 9 goals, 1 assist for 10 total points, 42 penalty minutes, and was a +6 on the season. He's played in 6 playoff games each of the last 2 seasons. Has yet to record a point there, but has become an integral part of the bottom 6 for the Minnesota Wild. A heavy hitter, someone that is not afraid to use his physicality and his frame to try to knock opposing players off their feet. Scouting report for Duhaime when he was initially drafted back in 2016. The big, rambunctious forward can fly on skates, and he will hit anyone in an opponent's jersey, making him a ferocious forechecker. More than just a physical presence, his speed and hands give him sufficient offensive skills that opponents cannot ignore. The long range potential, a big, fast, hard hitting depth forward. And for Duhaime, we've seen him as a player who has been able to register in the area of 1.5 to even 1.8 hits per game per 60 minutes when he's out there on the ice. Somebody who uses his physicality, but also uses his spark plug energy and high speed to help the Wild kind of just give them a jolt of energy at points throughout the last couple of seasons. We've seen Duhaime be able to impact the game even when he's just coming onto the ice after another line is hopping off for a line change, whether it be battling an opponent and beating an opponent to the puck with just beeline speed from the bench to the boards, or in the case of a couple of instances, scoring goals on his first shift uh, in his return to the ice, as he did against the Vegas Golden Knights. So, a lot to like with what Brandon Duhaime brings to the team, and was retained with a 1-year deal this past offseason before heading to arbitration. So, an opportunity for Duhaime to stick with the Minnesota Wild and a chance for him hopefully to continue to carve out a nice role in the bottom 6 of this Minnesota Wild roster. As mentioned, he was drafted in the 4th round of the 2016 NHL draft. We will talk about that a little bit more coming up at the end of the show today. But I think we're going to get to what everybody wants, which is to hear from Duhaime himself about the offseason, how he prepares for the start of an NHL season. And yes, we'll discuss music interests and getting potential revenge on Matt Dumba for filling his car with packing peanuts a few seasons ago. We'll talk about all of that and more as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Dive into the NFL season with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On and America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. For a lot of you who may be new to the NFL following Taylor Swift and her interests in Travis Kelce, there is plenty of opportunities to throw down some player props on Travis Kelce or other members of the Kansas City Chiefs. If you have another team in mind that is your favorite, don't worry. There are plenty of ways to pick up big winnings with them as well. They include spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So make sure to visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. For the everydayers, we've got a bonus episode coming later for you. Today, we will be talking to the new host of Locked on Stars, Joey Erickson, for a crossover episode to discuss how the Dallas Stars can go further in the postseason this year. So make sure to keep an eye out for that coming up later today. But let's get to the main attraction for today's episode. We have a full segment worth of content courtesy of Brandon Duhaime, who joined us earlier today to discuss life in the NHL and plenty more. And Locked on Wild is very excited to be joined by Minnesota Wild forward Brandon Duhaime to talk a little bit about the offseason and gearing up for the 2023-2024 season. Brandon, first off, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you feeling heading into the season?
Feeling good. Got the first preseason game out of the way there yesterday, and it's a little bit of adjustment coming from getting that first game back under your belt. So it wasn't perfect, but it was nice to get the win.
Let's just talk a little bit about that to start. How long does it take you typically to kind of get back into season mode once the preseason gets going?
For me personally, probably a couple games. I think you can practice all you want. You can you can bag skate all you want, but it's a different animal getting the legs under you when you play in an actual game. And, the contact, the physicality, it's a big part of my game. And I feel like that takes a little bit of time to get used to. And, I'd say a game or so and a couple of good hard practices.
Sure. One of the things I think that I enjoy most about watching your particular style of game is it seems like you can be a huge spark for this team when you come in off the bench, whether it be getting a goal quickly or just going and winning a puck battle along the boards. Is that a huge focus of your game and something that you kind of want to supply that spark anytime you come in?
Yeah, I feel like, anytime you step on the ice, it's it's an opportunity to perform. And, if I'm playing 8 minutes or 15 minutes a night or whatever it is, whatever position I'm in, it's important. I go out there and try to prove myself every shift. So I think that's, I got to give 100% every time.
You mentioned your physicality, which is a big part of your game. And I would imagine it's something where when you're on the ice, you kind of want to go just try to levy a hit on players, even if it's somebody that's a little bigger than you. How does that feel when you're out there?
I mean, sometimes it hurts a little bit, so it doesn't feel too good. But no, it's fun. I like that side of the game, playing that physical style. I think it comes with being smart and, maybe if you can poke the puck instead of going to try to hit a guy or something like that along those lines, it's sometimes better off just, being smart, taking a good smart stick and dislodging a puck, whatever it is. Or, sometimes it depends on the time of the game. You gotta, give us a spark and throw that big hit or whatever it is. So it's all situational.
Getting a chance to play with Pat Maroon this year as a linemate and a guy who has won multiple Stanley Cups throughout the course of his career. How much do you pick a guy's brain like that who's been around, who's seen it all, and plays a similar role to the one that you play for this team?
Yeah, definitely picking his brain a lot lately. It's been me, him, and Dewar on the line so far, and it's been a privilege playing with those two so far. And he said at first practice, he said, you get the chemistry early and then you build off it. So, whatever he's saying, I'm listening like a sponge, and he brings a winning pedigree. So it's awesome.
How is the team feeling as the preseason gets rolling, as we get closer to the season? A lot of the same players back this year, and so I would imagine you guys are hoping to have a similar result and just hopefully get a little further in the postseason this year.
Yeah, hopefully a better result. Then that's what we want. We're hungry for it. I don't think anyone's coming in satisfied. I think everyone's coming in hungry, and you see that in the practices we've had. And in the scrimmage we just had, there's physicality, there's grit. Everyone's kind of, getting their nose over pucks, and it's a hungry group, and we're excited.
Let's go back to the offseason was winding down. You were able to get a 1-year deal done with the Minnesota Wild to return again this season. How much has Minnesota become a second home for you throughout the course of your career so far?
It's been awesome. From when I was drafted in, I think it was 2016, I've been part of this organization. They've been first class, and the journey's been awesome coming out of college and playing some time in the American League, and now here it's been an unbelievable journey, and this is the only place I want to be, and I hope to stay here forever.
Couple of off-season questions and just a couple of fun ones too to close. Again, talking to Brandon Duhaime, Minnesota Wild forward. What was your highlight of the offseason? I'm sure getting a chance to relax was a big part of it, but anything notable that you were able to do or get done during the offseason?
Yeah, I had a few trips. Golf trip with a few of my buddies, bachelor party for one of my buddies that got married and went out to that wedding. But I think the highlight was right after the season, I went down to the Keys, the Florida Keys for 2 or 3 weeks there, and just spent a lot of time on the water, spearfishing, stuff like that, a lot of fishing, and just enjoyed soaking up the sun there.
That was going to be another thing that I had to make sure to ask about. I know I've heard from previous podcasts you are an avid spear fisherman. What's one of the biggest fish you've ever had a chance to catch?
Probably wouldn't blow you away too much. I don't know. Maybe 25, 30 pounds, nothing too crazy, but I just enjoy being out there, and the whole experience of it is it's pretty fun.
Yeah, as somebody who enjoys being out on a boat myself, there's nothing like just being out on the water, just relaxing and just enjoying. So glad to hear you get a chance to do that regularly. Do you take a few weeks, a month off in the off season before you ramp up, or do you kind of keep your conditioning at a regular level throughout the off season to kind of gear up for the next year?
Yeah, if you ask around, they'd probably give me a hard time and say I don't take enough time off. But yeah, I get, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, and then I start getting antsy to get back on the ice um, and getting back in the gym. I think that's a big part of my off season, and I really enjoy doing it. I probably should be a little smarter and maybe take a little more time off and rest the body a little more. But it's just it's a passion of mine that I like doing. So
You had a chance, many Wild players did, to see Old Dominion at XL Energy Center over the summer. I would gather then that you are a country music fan.
for the most, yeah, I'd say so. I liked Old Dominion a lot. I knew a bunch of their songs, and yeah, it was really cool to meet them.
What's the off-season music playlist look like? What kind of bands are you listening to?
It's all over the place. There's country, there's rap, there's techno. It's pretty widespread, but it all gets played on the boat at least.
Yeah, there you
Car
go.
rides, long car rides. It's in Florida for me. If I wanted to go to a skate, it usually took 30 minutes to drive to, and if I was going gym to skate, I'd be in the car for an hour and a half a day. So the playlist got pretty spread out.
Yeah, and it's whatever hits you that day. It's always going to change.
Exactly.
I did have a listener ask. They wanted to get your recollections of your first career NHL goal against the Anaheim Ducks. What do you remember? Take me through. I know you at that point in the game were trying to grab your stick and it deflected off into the net. What do you remember about your first career NHL goal?
I remember a little bit differently. I think right off the crossbar, a nice coast to coast goal or something like that. I don't remember it too much, but no, it was a lucky bounce. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It was I think Sturmy shot it from the point maybe and went right off my skate, and I was pretty surprised. I thought maybe it was going to get overturned for kicking, but I literally didn't know it hit my foot, so there's no way I could kick it. So worked out nice, but not how I drew it up as a kid, that's for sure.
Well, and to be fair, your previous first career NHL goal was waved off thanks to a challenge by the Los Angeles Kings. So in reality, thanks a lot to them for giving you this goal as opposed to a little easier one that you had against them.
Yeah, I'll show my kids one day. They'll be real excited.
Somebody else was curious about pranks on the team, and I know I hope this isn't a touchy subject, but I know Matt Dumba got you pretty good a few years back. Did you ever have a chance to get even with him for those packing peanuts?
No, I did not actually. I swept it on the rug. I let it be, but I'm still finding those packing peanuts in my car now. I got I forgot what it was, but I think I dropped something under my seat and I was reaching to kind of grab it, and I came out with a handful of packing peanuts. So that was nice.
Well, appreciate the time here today, Brandon. Thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck this season, and we will have to check in again with you as the season unfolds.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Seth. Appreciate it. It was a blast.
There you have it. Brandon Duhaime joining the show to discuss all things NHL as well as some fun off the ice as well. Looking forward to hopefully having him back on as the season unfolds to break down some of the action for this year's Minnesota Wild team. And we're hoping to have plenty of other players on throughout the course of the season as well to add to this getting to know them series that will run throughout the season as well. Some final thoughts to wrap up today's episode, including taking a look at where Duhaime sits amongst the rest of the 2016 fourth round draft class. We'll discuss that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. For the everydayers, once again, make sure you check out our special bonus episode coming later today. A crossover with the new host of the Locked On Stars podcast, that being Joey Erickson, talking about how these two teams will stack up throughout the course of the season and looking at some of the areas that Dallas needs to improve to truly take that next step. So you can look forward to that coming later today here on your podcast feeds. Wanted to look at the 2016 NHL draft class because, of course, Duhaime was selected in the 4th round of 2016. And if you look at the names on the list in terms of games played and production, Victor Mete, the leader at this point in games played at the NHL level. He was drafted by Montreal with the 100th overall pick in the 2016 NHL draft, and he's played in 247 career NHL games. Next up is Ross Colton with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's played in 190 games. Then it is Riley Stillman. Actually, it is Noah Gregor for San Jose. He's played in 178 games, then Riley Stillman at 158. And then in 5th, amongst the entirety of the 4th round, in terms of games played, is Minnesota's own Brandon Duhaime with 131 games. Now, in terms of penalty minutes, Duhaime is leading by far in not only the 4th round, but you have to go all the way up to the 2nd round, Ryan Lindgren, to find someone who has more penalty minutes. And so Duhaime certainly not afraid to mix it up with anybody who is in his way. And that certainly is something that the Wild are glad to have at their disposal amongst the bottom 6. So for Duhaime this season, as we talked about in our preview episode for him, going to be on the 4th line this year with Connor Dewar and with Pat Maroon. Duhaime also figures to start to get some work, as he did last year, on the penalty kill, and actually played on the penalty kill in yesterday's scrimmage. And so it figures that he will get more and more time on that unit as the Wild try to mix things up and add a little more speed to the lineup to help get those special teams units to where they should be, as opposed to where they have been. And I found it interesting as well when we talked with Duhaime about his contract and about how Minnesota has kind of become this second home that he's been able to enjoy over the last few seasons. And really seems like he wants to continue to play here. And the hope is that his contract situation will be resolved once the season is over. Obviously did sign the 1-year deal, but now will be an unrestricted free agent. And so the hope is that they'll be able to get something done with him, maybe for 2 or 3 more seasons, to fill that 4th line or maybe the 3rd line, depending on how things play out here over the next couple of seasons with rookie players and young players as well. All in all, Duhaime, as we have said many times in this show, a very good fit for this Minnesota Wild team on that 4th line or 3rd line, filling in there as well, because of a lot of the things that you just kind of take for granted watching players out there on the ice. The hustle, the ability to win battles along the boards, the ability to use his size to its full potential, something that we often got so frustrated with watching Jordan Greenway, in which he would just not be able to use the physicality to the level that you would expect that he probably should. And so all of those elements come together to make somebody that is pretty easy for not only this show, but a lot of Wild fans as well to it's a good embodiment of what you want in an NHL player. And so here's to hoping that Duhaime continues to elevate his game over the next couple of seasons, and as long as he is a member of this Minnesota Wild team, as you heard in the intro, we'll keep that rolling as the official podcast of the Brandon Duhaime fan club. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked on Wild. Again, we got a bonus episode coming for you later today where we'll take a look at the Dallas Stars in a Central Division crossover, taking a look at what they can potentially do this season, what they need to fix, and how the Stars can go to the next level. So be on the lookout for that coming up later today. We will also have plenty more for you as the week rolls on. So make sure that you take the time to get subscribed to Locked on Wild on YouTube or your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any of our episodes throughout the course of the week leading up to the start of the regular season. You can find all of our content and more by following us on Locked on Wild anywhere you listen to your podcasts, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network.